Okay, so let's set the scene. June 12th, 2025. You've got this state-of-the-art airplane taking off for what should have been a totally routine flight, but it never, ever reached its destination. What happened next was a national tragedy, for sure, but it also kicked off an investigation that has left the entire aviation world with this just deeply unsettling mystery. We're going to get into the story of Air India Flight 171.
At the very heart of this tragedy, there's a number that's just staggering. 241. And that is the number of souls, the passengers and the crew who were lost on board that flight. But then, amidst all of that catastrophic loss, there was another number. And honestly, it's almost unbelievable. That number is 1.
Yeah, just one. Out of 242 people on that plane, a single person was found alive in the wreckage. Can you even imagine? This sole survivor, who was sitting in seat 11A, became the only living witness to a disaster that otherwise left no one behind to tell the tale.
So, okay, what do we actually know about the flight itself? I mean, this was supposed to be a totally standard long-haul trip, the kind of flight that takes off and lands thousands of times every single day all across the globe. So, the flight was Air India 171. It was a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, a really modern plane. It was flying from Ahmedabad in India all the way to London Gatwick. But just moments, literally moments, after lifting off the runway, something went catastrophically wrong. The plane came down, crashing into a populated area right near the airport. Now, here's what makes this crash so profoundly shocking. It's the aircraft itself. We're not talking about some old, clunky plane. We're talking about the Dreamliner. And this wasn't just any plane. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was and still is a technological marvel. It's known for being super efficient, really comfortable, and, above all else, for its impeccable safety record. And look, the numbers totally back this up. For 14 years, think about that, 14 years, the entire global fleet of Dreamliners had flown without a single fatal accident. Zero. Statistically, it was one of the safest jets ever built. So this crash, this was its first. And that fact, just that alone, sent absolute shockwaves through the entire industry. So, with a plane this reliable, the huge, immediate question was just how? How could this possibly happen? India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, the AAIB, they descended on the scene right away to start the incredibly difficult process of finding some answers.
You know, the first steps in any crash investigation are just so critical. The investigators, they had to secure the entire site, map out where all the debris fell, and, most importantly, find the two key pieces of evidence: the cockpit voice recorder, the one that records the pilot's voices, and the flight data recorder. Now, the flight data recorder, or FDR, is basically the plane's black box. Think of it like the plane's memory. It tracks dozens and dozens of things, everything from airspeed and altitude to exactly how the engines are performing. It's the silent witness that can tell investigators exactly what the aircraft was doing in those final, tragic moments. So, of course, everyone was holding their breath, just waiting for that data to be analyzed. What story was the black box going to tell? Well, the preliminary finding, it was both incredibly simple and absolutely horrifying. The data was crystal clear. The plane didn't fall out of the sky because of some structural failure or because of bad weather. No, it fell because its engines, both of them, just stopped producing power. They just quit. The massive question, of course, was why? And that why led the investigation to zero in on two very small, very specific parts inside the cockpit. And believe it or not, these two little components would become the absolute heart of this whole mystery. Because the data from the FDR, it pointed to a shockingly simple reason for why both engines failed. The problem wasn't the engines themselves. The problem traced back to the fuel control switches for both engines. Okay, so here's how these switches work. It's actually super straightforward. When the switch is in the run position, fuel flows to the engine. Simple enough. When it's in the cutoff position, the fuel supply is, it's cut off. It stops. And what the data recorder showed was that shortly after takeoff, both of those switches moved from run to cutoff. The result? It was instantaneous. The engines were starved of fuel, and they flamed out. And this incredible discovery, this brings us right to the core dilemma. The one massive, unanswered question that investigators, the families, and the entire aviation industry are still wrestling with. Why? Why did those switches move?
Really, the investigation is now split between two very stark possibilities. On one hand, you have the theory of human error. Did one of the pilots accidentally, hit the switches during a supercritical phase of flight? Or is it possibility two, something maybe even more frightening, a mechanical fault? Did some kind of engineering or maintenance issue actually cause the switches to move all on their own? And you can imagine this uncertainty is just agonizing for the families of the victims. Many have come out and said they are simply not satisfied with the investigation's initial focus. They're worried that a rush to blame the pilots might mean everyone overlooks a much deeper, systemic problem with the plane itself.
And that right there is where this investigation still stands. Was it a tragic human error or a fatal aircraft flaw? The answer to that question won't just solve the mystery of this one crash. It could have profound implications for the safety of the thousands and thousands of people who fly on Dreamliners every single day. And the search for that answer, well, it continues.